Enshrouded is a game that I was actually keeping real close eye to. I was really interested in that game, although back when the game originally launched, or I should better say when the game entered into early access, I was covering different things, and there's only so much stuff that I can do by myself. So when I was offered the opportunity to actually work with them, and just cover the game on itself, I was just so thrilled that I know that I'm a little bit late to the party, it has to be said, that's entirely true for sure. But let's talk about Enshrouded and why I think that this is a game that you should be keeping your close aim to. Because this game right now it's only on early access for PC, but it is going to be launching real close in 2024 for the rest of the platforms, that being PlayStation, Xbox, and what have you. So yeah, I'm going to give you my reasoning. This is kind of like everything that I have been playing the game already for like 50 hours, and there's so much to talk about this game and so much stuff to be excited about Enshrouded. That being said, what is Enshrouded? Well, it's basically a survival game. Although, I know that a lot of people immediately hear like survival and it is a very niche game, they shy away from it. And I know that the thumbnail and title of the game say RPG because this is naturally an RPG, it really is. We'll go deeper into why a little bit later, but essentially you have this survival game where you have to explore the game, you have to go over the world, get new levels, explore new areas, go into dungeons, do some platforming, sometimes there's combat, there's building and stuff like that. There's all of the stuff that you would expect from a survival game, but when it comes to the combat, when it comes to the exploring in the world, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk about graphics. They are just gorgeous. The overall package you get is a beautiful, high fantasy world with a color palette that's always dynamic and never allows you to get bored of looking in one biome because there's always something else to look at. Something fresh, something compelling, something to keep you engaged. Even in caves in dungeon building, which is always something repetitive, it's still here, don't get me wrong. It's still inherent parts of every single open world game that you have out there with a similar system, dungeon system. But the variation into assets, textures, lighting, color, I never ever felt that I had already been in a cave or a dungeon before, just because they're similar in itself, and they are an activity that you have to repeat in the world. They're kind of different in here thanks to the saturation and the different assets that you have inside of them. And when it comes to particle effects, they are just definitely beautiful. Light sources combined with them allow you to see that mysterious mist that evocates the sentiment of isolation in a world that naturally, by itself, is a beautiful and gorgeous isolation. The game has a lot going on for it. I wouldn't say that it is a AAA quality graphic looking piece. Still, I would be lying if I'd say that at no point in time I was just standing there, just gazing at the distance, because of how lovely vistas are. The desert, the titan-built-like bridges, the fortresses, all of that while gliding down a tower, facing down from a distant mountain while they're being bathed in that morning dew, that morning mist, and that particularly gorgeous particle system that covers the world in that dynamic mist. That mist that can be jaw-dropping sometimes, and you actually spend quite a lot of time in the shroud because of how well and lovely the particle system is. Even with that gloomy feeling that is supposed to evocate players, it's still so alluring and fantastic. I love being in the shroud. And even while it has a similar color patterns and palettes and assets, the different regions, shrouds are always a joy to explore. That's great also, because you never feel punished by the timer shroud system. At least I didn't. I wanted to be in it as much time as I could possibly be in there and uncover every single mystery it had for me. Now, it comes hand in hand as well with performance. Before we proceed here, let's remember that this is an early access game. Issues are to be expected and patches are being rolled out to iron out the abrupt edges the game might have. That being said, by the time it reaches consoles, hopefully, stability in the game should be top-notched. Crashes first. I've had none. Zero. Quite literally no crashes at all. The game has been rock steady for me when it comes to data. I can tell you that I have been playing the game for about 50 hours at the time of this review, and I've had 0 crashes. That it's not to say that I didn't have my personal issues. I wasn't able to boot the game up in my PC, and that's kind of a subjective scenario. It all depends on the kind of builds and stuff you have going on for you on your PC. This is what I do. I do a lot of recording, scripting, editing. There's always lots of stuff going on my PC. One of which wasn't allowing me to boot the game. It's difficult to blame that on developers because it was a third-party issue. However, it still has to be pointed out, since it was an issue that it was a first timer for me. I've never had this with any other games. It has to be mentioned. And still, when it comes to performance, I'd say that it's also a hit and miss in here. Again, huge emphasis, the game is in early access. I'll give you my stats. I'm running the game on a 4080, and that is a beefy card. I have to say that. Lots of stuff depend on PC build and such things like that. Now, max settings, I was able to most of the time enjoy a fairly stable 70, 90-ish FPS while turning DLSS and balance, which has to be said as well. It's not that big of an issue when it comes to how the overall resolution looks. I rarely ever play my games in performance mode, balance mode, quality mode, let alone with DLSS on, and that is because I don't really enjoy that much of how blurry games can get if they are not implemented properly in their different games out there. In this case, Enshrouded looks still just so lovely, and you barely even notice the usage of DLSS because of how crisp it actually looks. So bravo on the upscaling technology implementation in here. Rest assured that if you want to use it to sustain some cheeky little FPS here and there, the game will still look phenomenal. You will still have a really high graphic quality experience by using the DLSS tech here. That said though, whenever there's a drastic change in illumination, particles, weather, especially night and day cycle transitioning, the game takes a huge hit in performance. I've been going to high 30s, lower 40s for quite some extended time. Whenever that happens, it sustains whenever the cycle is going through until it's either completely pitch black dark at night or bright new day. I do want to mention again that all of these stability issues are well known by developers by now. They're very open in patches with patch notes roll out clarifying that they are still hard working on them. And then again, huge mention in here, this is an early access. These kind of issues are to be expected in every single early access game that you have out there. All of that should be ironed out, and Enshrouded has a great community. Developers show in every single patch notes that they are very caring with that community, so that they of course are listening to all of the community, and they are trying to make sure that they are going to fix all of that kind of stuff. The one thing that I just, before we wrap up in here, that I just can't comment enough is that this is one of the best building systems that I have ever seen in my entire life. And we know ourselves, we men know ourselves. When we see builds, men happy. Building, men happy. And the building system in this game, it's just perfect. Recently, you know that we have been playing Pal World for quite a lot, and the building system in that, I mean, it's serviceable. It's a little bit buggy. Sometimes you cannot do things that you want to do. Here, it's not like that square things of shapes that also happen like in Conan Exiles, for example. Conan Exiles offers a little bit more freedom when it comes to building castles and stuff like that because of the shape of the things that you're going to be using to craft things. This case scenario, there is no there's no kind of a restriction per se. You can build whatever you want, however you want. It also doesn't mind too much about the physics, so that's something that it might weird you out a little bit. But the fact that you can just build anything where you want to, there's like the 90-degree angle, which is kind of a restriction, I'd say. But this is one of the few games that I would say that it would allow for your imagination to fly away and let you actually craft whatever it is that you want to craft, because of how well do you manage the assets. Like for example, when you want to build walls, your choice, it is your choice to use your just one block or a 4x4 or a 20x20. You get the idea. It's not a 20x20, but you get the idea. They get bigger or smaller, and that allows you for a kind of a interconnection in the building system, but it just feels so homogeneous and it just clicks and it's not buggy at all. At least the things that I have built myself right now did not feel buggy, and they look like how I pictured them on my mind because of how free it is for you to use the building system. I just can't stress enough how good the building system is. If this game revolutionized something, it is the building system because of how much freedom of location the items and the assets it gives to you. So yeah, there's that. When you compare games like V Rising, Conan Exiles, all the survival games that you have out there, the combat is just a side little thing, something that is serviceable for the purpose that it initially has, right? Here, I think that they went the extra mile. I'm not going to say that it is a perfect combat system. I'm not going to say that you're fighting in a Souls-like kind of game, that it is going to be precise and perfect at all times. But what I do have to tell you is that they did focus a little bit more. They put that extra emphasis, the extra mile when it comes to combat. And I say that because if you're skilled enough, you can actually fight things that are beyond your level. There's a parry system, there's a dodging system. Naturally, this being a survival game, the ultimate goal is just get better stuff, better gear, explore more, get better materials to craft better things, and then you can just bypass and smash the attack button, which is something that you can most certainly do, especially if you have a good build. But that being said, I wouldn't say that the combat is just serviceable. If you actually want to take the time, sometimes enemies are going to be sponges, that's for sure, it is an RPG. But most of the cases, if you time properly your parries, if you time properly your dodges, which rely a little bit more on distance than the iframes, you're going to be doing just fine, and you're going to be able to fight higher levels of enemies if you're doing all of these things proper. Sure, sometimes you will get the occasional one shot if you go too high on a level, but what I'm trying to say in here is that the combat is just not serviceable. The combat, it's actually a little bit extra that gives you something that works on itself. And when it comes to the RPG elements and the survival elements that I'm going to be covering them together, something that people don't like about survival games is having to manage the survival things like hunger, when you're thirsty, all of the other things that you have out there in the world. I'd say that here they work a little bit more in your favor. Yes, you can cook things, you can craft potions and all that kind of stuff that we all have to do in our survival games. But if you're more of an RPG kind of guy, the food, it doesn't spoil in here. You can stack as much as you want, and ideally it is going to contribute to your build rather than the survivability of your character. Sometimes it will give you more stamina, which, yes, of course, it will contribute to the survivability of your character, but more often than not, if you eat, like, for example, meat, sometimes it will give you strength to deal more melee damage. Sometimes it will give you constitution to be more tanky. If you eat mushrooms, which you can cook, or you can use alchemy on them, you're going to increase your mana, you're going to increase your intelligence, and overall that is going to contribute on the overall RPG build of your character. So that is a little bit of a fresh air when you don't actually have to be worrying about thirst. There's no thirst mechanic in here. Well, there is when it comes, if you count stamina, but if you don't eat, you want to rely on your gear, on your armor, and your weapons. You most certainly can. That being a survival, then what are the survival elements? Well, the Shroud. The Shroud is this mist that you enter, and it's timed. So when you explore there, you are timed and you are not able to fast travel. When you're in a tough situation where you need to repair your gear, you have to go back to your base. If you're out there in the open world doing dungeons, which are very cool to do, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but you're out there in the world, you're exploring, and you can just go back, use the fast travel system, go back to your base, restock, prepare yourself better, repair your items, which actually I love that. It doesn't cost you that much. You don't have to be wasting and farming endless materials to go back into the fray, because more often than not, the crafting in here is going to be serviceable for you to go back immediately to the fray, which in regular survival games, it's kind of like the other way around, where you have to do lots and lots of crafting and then go a little bit of exploring. This thing, it works a little bit more on the other side. The Shroud, if you enter there, you have to be sure that you're going to be prepared, that you're going to spend time in there. You can increase the amount of time that you can enter the shroud, but at the end of the day, you have to be aware of what is it that you're going to be doing in that place, because if you get caught in there without means of going back there to fast travel to your occasional base, then you're going to be in a really tough situation. Although one thing that I do like is the checkpoint system. You're going to find these little altars scattered throughout the world, which you do not fast travel to. There's different altars to do so, but if you actually die in the shroud or someplace like that, the punishment is not going to be that bad. I mean, like, the punishment, it's there, but like the items that you have equipped, nothing is going to happen to them. You can just go back and get your loot back. And yeah, I mean, overall, it's just a beginner-friendly game to survival. So the game doesn't hold your hands, but it's weird because I never feel that I have been over-punished by messing up in my character. And when it comes to exploration, it's just amazing. Like, the itemization, doing quests, you're going to get legendary weapons, legendary armor, cool stuff that you can later upgrade to be better. And if you're doing dungeon delving, there's a little bit of platforming, there's a little bit of puzzle solving, not too heavy, it is not too oversaturated that it welcomes its stay too much, too long. It's just nothing like that. Everything that you do while exploring, it's just going to be lovely, because at the end of the day, like I said, the predominance of the elements that you have in this game, they are the predominance of the RPG elements. The game has a gear system, the game has a skill system which you can use to craft your builds, and like I said, you complement your builds by eating stuff, by getting potions that increase the overall effectiveness of whether you're going to be a ranger, an assassin, a mage, a paladin. You can mix and match all of those skills to make a battle mage, to make a necromancer. Well, not necromancer, but you get the idea, you get the gist of everything. One final thing that I wanted to mention before we wrap up everything is that this game is in early access, and it provides a set amount of content for time that you're going to enjoy this thing. The price tag in this thing, it's just $30. Right now, I've been playing, like, after the review, after I've done writing the script and everything, I played a little bit more. I played around 80 hours of Enshrouded, and I want more. I haven't finished. So this game has given me 80 hours, meaning that you would be playing around $30 for 80 quality hours. Sure, there's the stability issues of every single early access game that you have out there, but if I'm being honest with you, I would, of course, be paying $60 for this game if there was the need to, because there's just so much quality in here that it deserves it. If you like the content and like it, never super appreciate it. No, you today, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. I will see you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people next one. Have a lovely, lovely day and goodbye.